The ghost that haunts the stars. The Xilarian fleet drifted through the debris field, their sensors sweeping methodically across the wreckage of what had once been humanity's last stand. Admiral Varric stood on the command deck of the Dominion, his scaled fingers tapping rhythmically against the railing as he surveyed the graveyard of ships. 50 years had passed since the Coalition had declared victory over the human resistance. 50 years since Earth had fallen silent. Another routine patrol. Commander Thrick sighed, her 4 eyes blinking in sequence. I don't understand why High Command insists we continue monitoring this sector. The humans are gone. Varric's jaw tightened. Protocol. Commander. The humans were unpredictable. They were extinct, Thrick corrected, studying the debris field. Their homeworld is uninhabitable, their colonies dismantled, their fleets destroyed. We won, Admiral. Something about her certainty disturbed Varric. In his 2 centuries of military service, he had fought many species, but none had fought like the humans. They didn't surrender when defeated. They adapted. They evolved their tactics mid-battle. They sacrificed themselves without hesitation for tactical advantages that wouldn't manifest until long after their deaths. Sir, the sensor officer called out, interrupting Varric's thoughts. We're detecting an anomaly at the edge of the field. Varric turned sharply. Define anomaly. The officer's hands trembled slightly as they manipulated the console. Energy signature, sir. Faint, but growing stronger. It doesn't match any known pattern in our database. A ripple of unease passed through the bridge crew. The sensor display flickered, showing a pulsing dot of light emerging from behind a particularly dense cluster of debris. Magnify, Varric ordered, his voice suddenly dry. The main view screen adjusted, focusing on a section of space that appeared empty at first glance. Then something shifted. A shadow separated itself from the darkness, edges resolving into the unmistakable silhouette of a warship. Not just any warship, a human dreadnought. Impossible, Thrick whispered. The vessel was massive, easily twice the size of the Dominion. Its hull was midnight black, absorbing rather than reflecting the distant starlight. No running lights, no visible propulsion systems, yet it moved with purpose, gliding through the debris field without disturbing a single piece. Scan for life signs, Varric commanded. The science officer worked frantically at her station. None detected, sir. The ship appears to be operating autonomously. A ghost ship, someone murmured from the back of the bridge. Varric had heard the stories. Rumors of human vessels that disappeared during the final battles, supposedly hiding in deep space, waiting to return. He had dismissed them as myths, propaganda meant to keep young recruits vigilant. Yet here one was, awakening after half a century of silence. Hail them, Varric ordered, straightening his uniform. The communications officer sent the standard greeting protocols. Seconds stretched into minutes with no response. The Dreadnought continued its approach, unhurried, unconcerned. Sir, the tactical officer said, voice tight with tension, the vessel is powering up weapons systems. Varric stared at the approaching ship. This couldn't be happening. The war was over. They had won. Raise shields, ready defensive countermeasures, but do not, I repeat, do not fire unless fired upon. The bridge fell silent as the massive black ship drew closer. It stopped precisely 2,000 kilometers from the Dominion, close enough to strike, far enough to react. For one breathless moment, nothing happened. Then, a transmission cut through the silence, flooding every channel with a voice that sent chills down Varric's spine. Not because it was threatening or alien, but because it was perfectly, impossibly human. You stand among the graves of our people, the voice said, calm and measured. Yet you do not understand what you've done. Varric stepped forward. This is Admiral Varric of the Xilarian Coalition. Identify yourself. A pause then. We are Vanguard. The last line. The final contingency. Your war is over, Varric responded, trying to keep his voice steady. Humanity lost. No, the voice replied, and for the first time, emotion colored its tone. Not anger or hatred, but something like pity. The war hasn't even begun. Before Varric could respond, sensors blared warnings across the bridge. The Dreadnought wasn't just one ship. It was deploying smaller vessels, dozens of them, emerging from hidden bays along its hull. "Sir," the tactical officer shouted, "they're surrounding us." Varric watched as the small, dart-like ships formed a perfect sphere around his fleet. They moved with precision no autopilot could achieve, yet according to the scans, they too were unmanned. The voice spoke again, echoing across every deck of every ship in Varric's fleet. "You believed us defeated because our voices fell silent. You never asked why." The black Dreadnought's hull began to glow with lines of blue energy, ancient human symbols illuminating one by one across its surface. "Now," the voice said, "you will learn." And with those words, the ghost of humanity's past awoke fully, ready to reveal why the silence had never been surrender. It had been preparation, echoes of extinction. The symbols on the Dreadnought's hull pulsed with hypnotic rhythm, casting eerie blue reflections across the Dominion's bridge. Admiral Varric felt a cold dread settling in his stomach as the smaller human vessels maintained their perfect formation around his fleet. "Sir," Commander Thrix whispered, "we should retreat. Call for reinforcements." Varric didn't respond immediately. Something about this encounter felt wrong. If this was a human warship seeking revenge, why hadn't it attacked already? His fleet was outmaneuvered, surrounded. "Admiral," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving a data transmission from the Dreadnought." "Isolate it," Varric ordered sharply. "Run it through every security protocol. Do not integrate it with our systems." The science officer worked frantically, her fingers dancing across the console. "Sir, it's not a weapon or virus. It appears to be historical records. Human historical records." The main view screen flickered, and images began to appear. Earth, not the barren wasteland it was now, but vibrant, blue and green. Human cities teeming with life. Human children playing in fields. Human scientists working in laboratories. The images shifted, showing the first contact between humans and the coalition races, diplomatic meetings, cultural exchanges, peace treaties signed. "What is this?" Thrix demanded. "Propaganda." Varric felt his heart beating faster. "No. History." The images continued, showing the early days before the war. Then came the change. Coalition ships firing on human outposts. Civilian colonies bombarded from orbit. The emergency session of the Human United Government as they voted to defend themselves. "This is a lie," Thrix said, but her voice lacked conviction. The transmission shifted again, showing coalition documents, classified military orders authorizing first strikes against human settlements, strategic plans for the conquest of Earth dating back decades before the war, resource assessments of human-controlled worlds. Varric recognized several of the documents. They were real. "They know," he said quietly. "Know what?" Thrix demanded. Before Varric could answer, the voice from the Dreadnought returned. "For 50 years, we have collected evidence. For 50 years, we have compiled the truth. Humanity did not start the war that nearly destroyed us. We were targeted for extermination because we refused to submit to exploitation." The images showed coalition mining operations on former human worlds, the systematic stripping of resources, the environmental devastation. "You're attempting to justify retaliation," Varric said into the comm. "But vengeance won't bring back your people." "This is not vengeance, Admiral Varric," the voice replied. "This is justice, and we are not seeking to bring back our people. We never left." The final images appeared on screen. Vast underground facilities on Earth and other seemingly dead worlds. Millions of humans in suspended animation. Hidden colonies and systems the Coalition had never explored. Generation ships traveling between the stars. "Impossible," Thrix breathed. "Our scans. We're fooled, the voice completed, just as they are being fooled now. A new alert sounded on the tactical station. The officer looked up, face pale with shock. "Sir, we're detecting new signatures. Hundreds of them, appearing from nowhere. They were cloaked somehow." The view screen shifted to show the space around them. Where moments before there had been only debris and the human vessels, now an armada materialized. Warships of human design, but unlike anything in Coalition records. Sleeker, more advanced. "You hunted us to extinction," the voice continued. "Forced us to evolve beyond recognition. What stands before you is not the remnant of a defeated species, but the vanguard of humanity transformed." The smaller vessels that had surrounded Varric's fleet suddenly changed, their hulls shifting like liquid metal, reconfiguring into new shapes. "We did not spend 50 years planning revenge, Admiral. We spent it ensuring justice would be possible." Admiral Varric gripped the railing, watching as more ships continued to appear, their hulls bearing the same glowing symbols as the Dreadnought. Not weapons of war, he realized with growing horror, but markers of judgment. "What do you want?" he asked, already knowing the answer would change everything. "The truth," the voice replied simply. "Broadcast to every world in the Coalition. Acknowledge what was done. Face accountability for crimes against an entire species. Do this, and there will be peace. And if we refuse..." The Dreadnought's symbols pulsed once, brightly, and every system on the Dominion shut down simultaneously, plunging the ship into darkness. Emergency power activated seconds later, restoring minimal functions. That, the voice said, was one ship affecting your entire fleet without firing a single weapon. Imagine what our armada could do. As if to emphasize the point, the human ships began to move in perfect coordination, a dance of power and precision that no Coalition fleet could match. "You have 12 hours to begin the transmission of truth, Admiral Varric. After that, humanity will no longer request justice. We will deliver it." The weight of truth. In the darkness of his private quarters, Admiral Varric reviewed the human historical records for the third time. Each viewing made the weight on his conscience heavier. The data was irrefutable. The Coalition had orchestrated the war, manipulated information, and committed atrocities against a species whose only crime had been refusing to surrender their resources. A chime at his door pulled him from his thoughts. "Enter," he called. Commander Thrix stepped inside, her posture rigid with tension. "Sir, we've received a transmission from High Command. They're ordering us to destroy the human vessels and return to Coalition space immediately." Varric leaned back in his chair. "And how exactly do they propose we do that, Commander? You saw what happened when that Dreadnought disabled our systems. They're sending reinforcements. 3 battle groups will arrive within 10 hours. "Not enough time," Varric murmured. "Sir?" He gestured to the screen where the human records were displayed. "Not enough time to prevent another war, Commander. One I fear we cannot win." Thrix stepped closer, her 4 eyes narrowing as she studied the display. "You can't believe these human fabrications. They're manipulating you." "Are they?" Varric stood, moving to the viewport where the massive black Dreadnought was visible against the backdrop of stars. "I was there, Thrix. 30 years ago, I was a junior officer during the bombardment of New Terra. I saw civilian shelters targeted deliberately. I followed orders without question, because I believed we were defending ourselves against human aggression." He turned to face her. "But it was a lie. All of it. The humans never planned to attack us. They were expanding, yes, but peacefully. It was our leadership who decided their resources were too valuable, their territory too strategic to leave in their hands." Thrix's scales flushed with agitation. "Even if that's true, what would you have us do? Surrender to these ghosts? These remnants?" "Not remnants, Commander. Survivors. Evolved." Varric gestured to the tactical display, showing the human armada surrounding them. "Look at their technology. In 50 years hiding from us, they've advanced beyond anything we can comprehend. If they wanted revenge, we would already be dead. A silence fell between them, broken only by the soft hum of the ship's systems. "We have 8 hours remaining before their deadline," Varric said finally. "I intend to use that time wisely." "Admiral." Varric activated his terminal. "I'm going to speak with the human commander directly. Arrange a meeting." Thrix stared at him in shock. "Sir, High Command expressly forbids." "High Command isn't here," Varric cut her off. "They haven't seen what I've seen. They haven't faced the truth of what we've done." Before Thrix could protest further, the communications officer's voice came through the intercom. "Admiral, the human Dreadnought is hailing us. They're requesting to speak with you personally." Varric exchanged a glance with Thrix. "It seems they anticipated my request. Put them through to my quarters." The screen on his wall flickered, and for the first time, Varric saw the face behind the voice. It was human, but not entirely. The figure had the basic structure of humanity: 2 eyes, a symmetrical face, but subtle differences suggested extensive genetic modification. The skin was too perfect, the eyes too intensely focused, with a slight luminescence that wasn't natural. "Admiral Varric," the figure said, its voice matching the one that had addressed them earlier. "I am Commander Ilara of the Vanguard." Varric straightened. "Commander, your demonstration of power was convincing, as was your historical evidence. Yet your leaders have ordered our destruction," Ilara replied, a statement rather than a question. Varric felt a chill. There was no way they could know about the transmission from High Command unless— "You've breached our communications." "We breached your communications 50 years ago, Admiral. How do you think we gathered so much evidence?" A hint of a smile crossed Ilara's face. "Your reinforcements will not arrive in time, and they would not prevail if they did." "I'm beginning to understand that," Varric admitted. "What I don't understand is why you're giving us a choice at all. If what you've shown me is true, you have every right to seek vengeance." Ilara's expression softened slightly. "Because despite everything your people did to us, we haven't abandoned what makes us human. Justice is not the same as revenge. Admiral, we want accountability, not extinction, even though that's what we sought for you. Especially because of that." Ilara leaned forward. "We've had 50 years to reflect on what makes a civilization worth preserving, Admiral. It isn't power. It isn't territory. It's the ability to face uncomfortable truths and grow beyond them." Varric considered this. "You understand that by broadcasting these records, you'll be destabilizing the entire coalition. There will be unrest, possibly civil war." "We understand. We also understand that without truth, there can be no lasting peace between our peoples." A notification appeared on Varric's terminal, a message from the tactical officer. The reinforcements from High Command had increased speed. They would arrive in 6 hours, not 10. Ilara noticed his reaction. "They're coming sooner than expected." Again, not a question. "Yes. Then you have a decision to make, Admiral, and not much time to make it." Varric took a deep breath. "What if I agree to broadcast the records? What assurance do I have that your Vanguard won't simply destroy us afterward?" "The same assurance we had when we revealed ourselves to you instead of attacking without warning," Ilara replied. "Faith in the better nature of another species." The words struck Varric deeply. After everything the Coalition had done, these humans were still willing to believe in the possibility of redemption. "Very well," he said finally. "I'll need access to the Coalition Emergency Broadcast Network." Ilara nodded. "We can provide that. Our systems have maintained access to your networks for decades." Thrix, who had remained silent during the exchange, finally spoke. "Admiral, this is treason." "No, Commander," Varric replied, his gaze still fixed on Ilara's face. "This is the first honest thing I've done in my entire career. A choice of worlds." The Coalition Emergency Broadcast Network had never been used in its 50 years of existence. Created after the Human War as a safeguard against future threats, it was designed to reach every Coalition world simultaneously, overriding all other communications. Admiral Varric stood before the recording equipment hastily set up on the Dominion's bridge. Behind him, Commander Thrix watched with barely concealed disapproval, while two of Ilara's human operatives monitored the broadcast preparations. They were clearly augmented, their movements too precise, their focus too unwavering to be entirely biological. The transmission will reach approximately 87% of Coalition space instantly, one of the humans explained, fingers dancing across a holographic interface. The remaining systems will receive it within minutes as it propagates through the relay network. Varric nodded, adjusting his formal uniform. And High Command. They'll attempt to cut the transmission. They'll try, the human acknowledged with a slight smile. They'll fail. Commander Thrix stepped forward. Admiral, I must register a formal protest. What you're about to do is already done, Commander, Varric interrupted quietly. The only question remaining is whether we face the consequences of our civilization's actions with dignity, or continue denying them until we're forced to confront them. The human technician looked up. We're ready, Admiral. Varric took a deep breath and nodded. The recording light activated, and he found himself facing not just his crew, not just the Coalition, but history itself. I am Admiral Varric of the Coalition fleet, he began, his voice steady despite the gravity of the moment. What I am about to share will challenge everything you believe about our recent history. 50 years ago, the Coalition declared victory in what we called the human containment conflict. We were told that humanity had been an existential threat, an aggressive expansionist species that needed to be contained for the safety of all civilized worlds. He paused, gathering his strength. That was a lie. A lie I participated in. A lie I helped enforce. With a gesture, he activated the display behind him, showing the first of the human historical records. The unprovoked attack on their colonies, the classified documents authorizing the war, the deliberate targeting of civilian populations. The humans were not our enemies until we made them so, Varric continued. They were deemed a threat not because of aggression, but because they refused to surrender their resource-rich worlds to Coalition mining interests, because their rapid technological development was seen as competition rather than opportunity, because their very adaptability was feared rather than respected. As he spoke, more images appeared behind him. The systematic destruction of human worlds, the false propaganda distributed throughout Coalition space, the war crimes committed in the name of security. I stand before you now because humanity has returned, Varric said, his voice growing stronger. Not as conquerors, but as survivors seeking justice. They have shown me irrefutable evidence of our crimes, and they have demonstrated power that far exceeds our own. Yet they have not used that power for revenge. A warning light flashed on the communications console. High Command was attempting to terminate the broadcast. The human technician made a small adjustment, and the warning disappeared. The Coalition faces a choice, Varric continued. We can acknowledge the truth and seek reconciliation with a species we wrongly tried to exterminate, or we can continue our deception and face the consequences. Humanity has given us 12 hours to begin this process of truth. I have chosen not to wait. He straightened to his full height, scales gleaming under the bridge lights. As of this moment, I am ordering all vessels under my command to stand down. I recognize the human vanguard as legitimate representatives of their species, and I formally request that the Coalition Council convene an emergency session to address the crimes committed against humanity and begin a process of reconciliation. Varric paused, then added, the time for lies is over. What follows now is up to all of us. With a gesture, he ended the transmission. For a moment, the bridge was completely silent. Then the tactical officer's console began blaring alerts. Sir, the officer said, voice tight with tension, multiple hyperspace signatures detected. Coalition reinforcements have arrived. Early. Varric turned to the view screen where a dozen Coalition warships were emerging from hyperspace jumps. Heavily armed dreadnoughts, each capable of devastating an entire planet. They must have been closer than we thought, Thrix murmured, or already en route before the official orders. The human technicians exchanged a glance but showed no concern. One of them touched a small device at their wrist, presumably communicating with their fleet. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "we're being hailed by Admiral Zokran of the Retribution." Varek nodded grimly. Zokran was a hardliner, notorious for his brutal efficiency during the human war. "Put him through." The weathered face of Admiral Zokran appeared on screen, his expression coldly furious. "Admiral Varek, by order of Coalition High Command, you are relieved of duty effective immediately. Your transmission has been designated as hostile propaganda and is being purged from the networks. Surrender your vessel and prepare to be boarded." Varek stood his ground. "The transmission cannot be purged, Zokran. The truth is already spreading. Then we'll deal with the consequences after we've eliminated these human abominations," Zokran snarled. "All ships target the enemy vessels and—" The transmission cut off abruptly as every Coalition reinforcement ship suddenly went dark, their systems shutting down simultaneously just as the Dominions had earlier. They drifted helplessly, emergency power the only sign they weren't completely dead in space. One of the human technicians smiled slightly. "Admiral Zokran will be offline for approximately 30 minutes, enough time for the complete transmission to reach every Coalition world." Varek stared at the disabled fleet. "You could have done that at any time." "Yes," the technician acknowledged, "but that wouldn't have achieved our goals. Your willing testimony carries far more weight than any force broadcast." The view screen changed to show Commander Ilara from the Dreadnought. "Admiral Varek, we've detected multiple communication surges across Coalition space. Your transmission is being shared and discussed on thousands of worlds simultaneously. You've done what we asked, and more." Varek nodded slowly. "What happens now?" "Now," Ilara said, "we wait to see if your people choose truth or denial, justice or conflict. The future of both our species depends on that choice." As if to emphasize her point, more human ships began to appear around them, emerging from whatever advanced cloaking had kept them hidden. Not dozens, not hundreds, but thousands, an armada that could have wiped out the Coalition fleet in moments if they had chosen to. "And if they choose wrong?" Thrix asked quietly. Ilara's expression remained calm, but something ancient and resolute settled in her eyes. "Then humanity will no longer request a seat at the table of galactic civilization. We will take it, by whatever means necessary." The human Dreadnought symbols pulsed once more, a silent reminder of power held in check only by choice. Ripples across the stars. 24 hours after Admiral Varek's broadcast, the Coalition was in chaos. On thousands of worlds, citizens demanded answers from their governments. Military vessels refused orders to mobilize against the human fleet. Colonial administrators released classified documents confirming Varek's revelations. What had begun as one admiral's confession had cascaded into a full-scale political crisis. On the bridge of the Dominion, Varek watched the reports flooding in from across Coalition space with a mixture of relief and apprehension. Commander Thrix stood beside him, her initial opposition gradually giving way to a reluctant acceptance of their new reality. 17 member worlds have officially called for an emergency session of the Coalition Council, she reported, scanning the latest updates, including 3 of the founding species. Varek nodded. "And High Command?" "Divided. Admiral Zokran and his faction are demanding immediate military action, but they're increasingly isolated. Most of the Fleet Admiralty is calling for restraint until the Council convenes." A junior officer approached with a data tablet. "Sir, we've received a direct communication from President Lorax of the Coalition Council. They're requesting your presence at the emergency session on Centralis." "Requesting or demanding?" Varek asked wryly. "The language suggests a request." "Sir," the officer replied. "They're also extending an invitation to Commander Ilara as representative of humanity." Varric exchanged a glance with Thrix. This was unprecedented, inviting a non-coalition species to address the Council directly. "It appears your gamble is paying off, Admiral," Thrix said quietly. "It wasn't my gamble," Varric replied. "It was humanity's." The communication station chimed, indicating an incoming transmission from the human dreadnought. Commander Ilara's face appeared on screen, her expression unreadable. "Admiral Varric, I understand we've both received invitations to Centralis." "Yes," Varric confirmed. "Will you accept?" Ilara considered for a moment. "The Council chamber would place us at a significant tactical disadvantage." "This isn't about tactics anymore, Commander," Varric said. "It's about building something new from the ruins of our mistakes." A hint of a smile crossed Ilara's face. "You sound almost human, Admiral." "Perhaps that's not the insult it once was," he replied. "No, perhaps not." Ilara nodded decisively. "We will accept the invitation, but with conditions. Our delegation will include representatives from various human factions, and we will maintain a significant fleet presence in orbit around Centralis. The Council will see that as a threat." "Good," Ilara said simply. "Some of your people need to be reminded that justice delayed is not justice denied. We have waited 50 years. We will not be dismissed or placated with empty promises." Varric found he couldn't argue with her logic. The Coalition had earned humanity's distrust 1,000 times over. "There's something else you should know," Ilara continued, her tone shifting slightly. "Since your broadcast, we've been receiving transmissions from across Coalition space. Not from governments or military, but from ordinary citizens. Individuals who always suspected the truth about the war. Species who suffered similar aggressions, but lacked the means to resist as we did." She gestured, and the screen filled with messages, thousands of them, from dozens of species. Expressions of support, offers of alliance, requests for protection. "It seems humanity is not the only victim of Coalition expansion," Varric said grimly. "No," Ilara agreed. "Just the only one that survived to return." The implications were profound. What had begun as humanity seeking justice for itself was evolving into something larger, a reckoning for the entire power structure of the Coalition. "Admiral," Thrix said suddenly, "we're detecting multiple hyperspace signatures approaching. Not Coalition design." The tactical display showed dozens of vessels emerging into normal space around them. Ships of various designs, representing at least 7 different non-Coalition species. "They're hailing us," the communications officer reported with surprise. "And the human dreadnought." Ilara's expression softened slightly. "It appears our audience with the Council will be larger than anticipated." As Varric watched the strange fleet assemble, he felt a profound shift in the galaxy's balance of power. The Coalition had spent centuries believing itself the pinnacle of civilization, the rightful arbiter of galactic affairs. That illusion was crumbling before his eyes. "We depart for Centralis in 6 hours, Varric decided. "Commander Thrix, prepare a full diplomatic contingent." "Sir." Thrix looked confused. "We're a military vessel, not a diplomatic carrier." "Not anymore," Varric replied. "As of this moment, the Dominion is a ship of peace. Let's make sure our appearance reflects that." As the newly arrived vessels moved into formation alongside the human fleet, Varric felt a strange sense of hope. The war that was supposed to be over had indeed ended, not 50 years ago, with the false victory of the Coalition, but here, now, with the possibility of a new beginning. Commander Ilara's voice interrupted his thoughts. "Admiral, before we depart for Centralis, there's someone who wishes to speak with you. Someone who has waited a very long time for this moment." The screen changed, and Varric found himself looking at a human much older than Ilara, one without the obvious signs of genetic modification. His face was weathered, his hair white, but his eyes burned with an intensity that transcended age. "Admiral Varric," the man said, his voice steady despite its age. "My name is General Thomas Chen, former Supreme Commander of Earth's Defense Forces, 50 years ago, I watched your coalition reduce my world to ashes. Today, I have lived long enough to see the beginning of justice. Varric felt the weight of history pressing down on him. General Chen, I have no words that could adequately save them. Chen interrupted, not unkindly. Words mean nothing without actions to support them. I have agreed to join the delegation to Centralis because I believe in Commander Ilara's vision of justice rather than vengeance. But make no mistake, Admiral. Many humans would have preferred to see the coalition burn as Earth did. I understand, Varric said quietly. No, Chen replied. You don't. Not yet. But you will. The old general's expression softened slightly. Your broadcast was the first step on a very long road. Admiral, I hope we will walk it together. As the transmission ended, Varric turned to look at the stars beyond the viewscreen. The galaxy had changed in the span of a day. What would it become in the days to come? The Council of Reckoning. The Grand Chamber of the Coalition Council on Centralis had been designed to inspire awe. Vast crystalline walls soared hundreds of meters overhead, while the circular floor could accommodate representatives from all 83 member species. For centuries, it had been the heart of galactic governance, the place where the powerful made decisions that affected trillions. Today, it felt more like a tribunal. Admiral Varric stood at the speaker's podium, facing the assembled council representatives. Behind him sat Commander Ilara and General Chen, along with delegates from the 7 non-coalition species who had joined their journey to Centralis. In the public galleries, thousands watched in person while billions more viewed the proceedings via transmission. President Lorax, an ancient member of the serpentine Sizic species, raised a clawed hand for silence. This emergency session of the Coalition Council is called to order. We face an unprecedented situation. The return of a species believed extinct, bearing evidence of grievous wrongdoing by this very body. Murmurs swept through the chamber, quickly silenced by Lorax's stern gaze. Admiral Varric of the Xilarian fleet will present his testimony, followed by Commander Ilara and General Chen representing humanity. The council will then deliberate on an appropriate response. Varric squared his shoulders and began. For 2 hours, he methodically presented the evidence, official records, classified military orders, eyewitness accounts. He detailed his own participation in the campaign against humanity, his gradual recognition of the deception, and his decision to broadcast the truth. When he finished, the chamber was silent, the weight of collective guilt hanging in the air. President Lorax turned to the human delegation. Commander Ilara, we invite you to address the council. Ilara rose with fluid grace. Unlike Varric's formal military attire, she wore a simple black uniform without insignia. Only the faint blue glow in her eyes hinted at her enhanced nature. 50 years ago, she began, her voice carrying effortlessly through the vast space. Humanity stood on the brink of a golden age. Our technology was advancing rapidly. Our colonies were thriving. Our relations with other species, including many represented in this chamber, were peaceful and mutually beneficial. She gestured toward the historical displays Varric had activated. Then came the Coalition's first strikes. Without warning, without provocation, millions dead in a single day. Images appeared on the chamber's displays, orbital bombardments of civilian colonies, refugee ships destroyed, concentration camps for human prisoners. We fought back, of course. Humanity has always excelled at warfare when pressed. But we were outnumbered, outgunned, facing a coalition of dozens of species. In the end, Earth itself was rendered uninhabitable, our colonies occupied or destroyed. Ilara's eyes swept across the assembled representatives. Or so you believed. New images appeared, massive underground complexes, hidden bases in asteroid fields, stealth ships carrying thousands in cryostasis. Some of us escaped. Some of us hid. Some of us transformed ourselves to survive in environments you would never think to look. She touched her temple, indicating her own modifications, while the coalition celebrated its victory. We rebuilt. We evolved. We prepared. She paused, letting the implications sink in. Not for revenge, though many of us desired it, but for justice. General Chen stood then, walking slowly to join Ilara at the podium. His unenhanced human frailty created a stark contrast with her perfection, yet somehow made their presence more powerful. "I commanded Earth's final defense," the old general said, his voice surprisingly strong. "I gave the order for our